Before we kind of get into the story of Cacique and like that, I know just from everything I've seen from you, you can't, it's hard to tell your story without your mom and dad.
Yeah.
What was their life like in Cuba?
Oh, that was very challenging, very challenging. I remember times, for example, where my mom would make lunch or dinner and there was no food for her. So my sisters, my brother wasn't born yet, my sisters and I would eat and she would sit with us, but she wouldn't eat. And a lot of stories along that. So my dad worked away from the home to do everything he could to put literally food on the table because everything was difficult to get at the time. It's still that way. And she would be home with us, doing whatever she could. It was it's a beautiful country, but a very difficult time.
Yeah.
Very difficult time.
What was it like seeing the United States for the first time?
So I've got a story. It's what happened to me, and I laugh at it now. So we got to Miami, I was 8 years old. I had been in grocery stores in Cuba with empty shelves. You go there with your little booklet and you hand it out, everything's rationed. And you get your pound of rice, your pound of beans. There's nothing on the shelves.
Yeah.
Just in the back of the store, and I go with my mom and accompany her. And she would tell me what it was like before these shelves were full. But as a kid, I can't visualize that. So we go to a grocery store in Miami, maybe 2 or 3 days after we had arrived. The first thing that strikes me is the doors open for people walking. And I'm looking at it, they never touched the door. It's those mats. But as a kid, I'd never seen that before, so I was like, this is magic.
Yeah.
This is so strange. And I asked my parents, and they didn't know what it was either. And then I walked in the grocery store, and I see food. As much food as you could ever want. And it was, to this day, it made a huge impact on me, on how different things were. Up until then, we were thinking, why are we here? Mom and Dad, why you brought us here? Yeah, kids, my little sister's 6, my other one's 7. My mom is pregnant. And then to me, as an 8-year-old, that was really the turn. I'm like, oh, I get it, there's food here. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, which we hadn't seen before. Does that make sense?
That was the moment you got it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the moment, this is why we're here. We're not gonna be hungry again. It was literally, as an 8-year-old, it was just a flip. And that was it. Yeah. A grocery store in Miami.
You know, you talk about that moment. Was there a moment that something clicked for your dad? You know, when you think about the opportunity that he left, behind in Cuba, and then coming to the U.S., was there a moment early on was there a moment that it clicked for your dad?
Yeah, the moment he got here, he said.
Yeah.
The freedom. It's really difficult to express that until you've been through it. I went to school to a place that they would come in, soldiers would, and say, today we're gonna prove to you there's no God. Now, whether you believe or not isn't the issue, it's this constant bombarding of a certain belief system. So they would do it is bow your heads and pray to God to give you candy. But lift your heads, does anyone have candy? Of course not. So now we're going to go by and please ask the state or the government for a piece of candy. Now you're 8 years old, 7 years old, the indoctrination has started. So that's from my perspective, what I remember the most is that kind of environment. For my dad, it's far, far worse. He couldn't find a job. There were no jobs to be had. There really weren't opportunities unless you created them, and those are very difficult to make, to the point you could get arrested if you're doing something they don't want you to do. So to get here and being able to get a job, whatever it was, and then move job to job, for him was heaven. He could make He could literally put food on the table and not have to worry about it because he knew there was work and there's honor in work.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for him, it was literally, in talking, it was just as soon as we got here, he said it was everything I thought it would be.
Yeah.
When we left Cuba, we left in an old, I think it was a DC-3. We left from Cuba to Miami, and there were, I'll never forget, the tail of the plane had an American flag on. And as we're boarding, everyone was really quiet, really, really quiet. The police come in and take one man off. And I don't know what happened to him, but everybody's very quiet. The door closes, and as soon as the airplane took off, people kind of perked up, and as soon as the pilot said we're over international waters, it was cheering. How do you articulate that? How can you live through that? So I was 8 years old, and I'm still feeling the emotions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
No.
You're really hitting some points here that I haven't thought about in a long, long time.
Yeah. But it's easy to draw that very direct line from where you are today to where your dad and your mom started. In those early days, how much did your dad lean on his family?
How much did his family lean on him? In the very early days, my dad would have 2 jobs. Anything that put food on the table, and we were all happy for it. And then one day he walks into, my dad was a cheesemaker in Cuba. He had a little cheese plant that he operated with my grandfather, making queso fresco. And then one day he walked into a little grocery store in Alhambra, California, and he saw they were doing a demonstration of queso fresco. So he hadn't seen any yet. He went and tasted it and thought, it's not bad, but I can make better. I've made better. So he went and spoke to the butcher who was really the manager of the store and said, what do you think about this? The butcher said, it's okay, I've had better, but it's all we have, and it sells really great. That 2-3 minute conversation was the genesis for this company. My dad comes running home and hear my mom tell the story. I know what we're going to do in the future. So that they started experimenting at home with recipes. They saved $1,500. And that was the investment. So my dad found a building. It was a food plant that was in bad shape. He had been a handyman as well. So he spent about 6 months putting it back together to code. Past the code, our plant number at the time, I don't remember the number exactly, was actually the Boy Scout troop number of the inspector, who said, who told my dad after he passed, said, when I gave you the list of things you had to fix, I didn't think you'd ever get there. And my dad said he got very emotional. And he said, this number's always been lucky for me. And that's the number he gave for the plant, which is also his son's Boy Scout troop. So we're all connected with people and community at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that was $1,500 that started, and they were making about 80 pounds of cheese a day or so.
Okay.
But it was just the 2 of them. So leaning on,
Just your dad and your mom?
we were 9, 10 years old. We had to be in school. So the way it worked is my dad would leave very early in the morning to start the cheese making process. My mom would take us to school. Then she would leave to the plant. She would take over. Then he would load up the family car, which was the first delivery vehicle, a teal green Pontiac.
Yeah.
That's why that chair is there.
Yeah.
For that color, to kind of remind us of where we come from.
Yeah.
And he would go door to door and sell a pound at a time, hoping that next week it was 2. And when he was out, it was only 80, 90 pounds. He'd come back to the plant. My mom would leave to pick us up from school, help us with homework, get dinner started, and my dad would come home around 9 or 10 o'clock at night after he had finished and cleaned, and the process would start the next day.
Wow.
I never heard my dad complain once about that schedule, and that schedule went on for several years. I never heard him complain. We'd only see him on weekends.
That's a backbreaking schedule.
Yeah, but he did it happily.
Yeah.
It is. You learn so much as a child. Looking at your parents and picking up on the things that they do that you inherit and you want to emulate. For my parents, for me, it was that dedication to family, the dedication to putting meat on the table, food on the table, and just work is honor.
Yeah.
I learned that from them to this very day.
Yeah.
I think about that.
Did you help out as well?
Oh, we all did. At some point, here comes summer.
Yeah.
Guess what happens then? They're taking us to the plant. So I would help my dad delivery. I help him make cheese. So would my sisters. It was a family affair during summer.
Okay.
No vacations.
Yeah.
Everyone was working until there was enough size of the business to hire help, 1, 2, 3, and from there to today, we have almost 500 people in the organization.
When you look back at those early lessons that you saw firsthand with your mom and your dad in this company, did you learn some valuable lessons about scale and scaling up?
Not yet. At that point, it was really about literally feeding the family and doing what you need to do to feed the family. I learned about that much, much later, about how to scale, and that's a lesson I keep learning. Because you get to these thresholds, so to speak, or hurdles, and then you get through it, and then another window or door opens up that makes you realize, boy, we've got a lot more still to accomplish. Then you get there, it's like sports, you hit goals, and when you get to the next goal, you realize, so what?
Yeah.
Right? It's not what's back there, it's what's going up in here. It's the same thing with the size of the business, building a business, is you're always looking eyes downfield constantly.
What was the, well, I guess, how difficult is it to get your products placed in the big grocery? How difficult is it to get your products placed in some of the big grocery chains?
That's a great question. There's things we had to do to change the mentality of the market. So I left the business. I was in the business up until 2002. I left the business and came back. And when I came back, do you remember Oldsmobile?
Yeah.
The car,
Sure.
and do you remember why they failed?
Yep.
It was your father's car.
Yep.
They didn't build a network of new consumers because it was always their father's car.
Yeah.
And at one point, there were no fathers, no mothers left, and they died basically
Yeah.
as a brand. So when I come back into the business, I keep thinking about that. We haven't changed our business. It continues to grow, but it's the same markets, it's the same geography, same consumers. Are we at some point going to be in that environment? So what we did was, when I came back to the business, one of the first things we did was study. We wanted to know, we knew who our consumers were. We wanted to know about their kids. We wanted to know if they were going to follow in their parents' footsteps or go in different directions as far as food. We wanted to know about people that ate Mexican food but not our products, that weren't Hispanic. So that study changed our business. What came back, what I was afraid of, was the new generation doesn't know who you are. The generation thinks you're stuffy, you're old, you're someone else's product, and it came back very different. That next generation basically told us, we grew up with your product, we love your product, but we're different than our parents.
Yeah.
That was the information, that's what we learned. So to answer your question, it's a long answer, but then we realized that was a moment in time we stood back and said, well, if they feel this way, look how much broader this becomes.
Yeah.
A lot of that next generation is not marrying within those cultural roots. They're marrying way outside. So those are new families we haven't touched. But we went through this process of understanding how much bigger the market could be. And then we made a change of moving, not away, but certainly different ways of marketing. We were just marketing the first generation Hispanic. So now we know we need to market the third generation and non-Spanish speakers.
Yeah.
And when we started doing that, the response was pretty impressive. Then we could go to the large groceries and with data.
Yeah.
At first when we went to them, and I skipped this step, they would look at us and say, you're just a brand for Hispanic. I've got all these stores that I don't have any Hispanics in. I don't need you.
Right. You had to show them the data to prove that they respected data. They needed data.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then we brought the data and then it's like, okay, instead of I've got 300, I'll give you 20. I'll give you 50. until finally we've got them all.
Yeah.
So in the Western US, our distribution is 9, 10 out of 10 from here west.
Wow.
Years of that data and being able to reach the market from California. And it was all about data. So to answer your question, it was a very tough process until we proved our point. It's never easy, to be clear, but it's much easier now that we really cater to a much broader audience, and that audience supports us.
So you had to prove to the grocery stores there's a market beyond first generation Latino families.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we did it with data.
Yeah.
And we did it with the study, and then again, those few stories at a time, and bringing the data to them.
Yeah.
It took a while for them to trust us, because to them it was a big leap also. No one had done that before in our category. They didn't understand it that well. But again, the data kept proving that we were on the right path. And I understand their position. I've got a limited amount of shelves. I need to put product on the shelf that's going to sell. If it doesn't sell, then I've got a problem.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take a risk. That's where the data comes in. You've got to show them the data. And even then it's kind of like, let's try it. Let's, again, a few stores.
Okay.
And a few more, and a few more, and before you know it, you're in the entire chain. And then that's just Ralph's, for example, in Southern California. Then the corporate headquarters starts noticing. It's work. It is a lot of work, but we have great people and we have great customers that open their doors to us, and they want to collaborate with us now.
And have you seen, since the time when your mom and dad started the company to what we see today, do you see the American consumer, the American family has embraced a wider variety of foods that they're preparing at home? Where it used to be a lot more segmented.
Yes.
You cooked your food, they cooked their food. Do you see a difference now in terms of people, I guess, do you see a difference now in the American family sort of expanding its palate to cook a wider variety of foods?
So the way we look at it is this country is a melting pot of cultures and people. It's now becoming a melting pot of food as well. It really is. Think about salsa outsells ketchup, mayonnaise, and mustard. Tortillas outsell bread. And that story goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
If you think about mozzarella, that's an American cheese. It's part of the American culture. 130 years ago, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It came with Italian immigrants for their culture, for their families. And someone liked it, it spread, and today it's really part of the overall culture.
Yeah.
You could say the same thing about pizza. So many foods we have, we are really a melting pot of food. And it is just getting more and more interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Today, when you look at the brand, when you look at the offerings, do you remember certain foods, tastes, textures that stayed with you as a child?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all do. What you ate from mom. Mom makes the best cookies ever.
Yeah.
They may not be good to anybody else, but they were the best that I had, right? And that's an interesting concept because we talk about authenticity that way. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot. And to us, it's what you're familiar with, what you ate at home, that's authentic to you. So as you remember foods that way, those are what I call authentic foods. I remember my mom didn't have much time to make dinner. She worked during the day, she'd help us with homework, she was waiting for my dad, and now she's got to make dinner. So she made some really fast dinners that to this day I still enjoy. Mom would, for example, she made, she's going to kill me for this. She'd roasted chicken, throw it in the oven, she'd put peaches on it and sour cream. That's all the time she had.
Yeah.
To me, this is delicious, Mom.
Yeah.
So when I see her from time to time, she still makes it for me.
Yeah.
It's a real simple dish. So I remember I think we all do.
Yeah.
We remember those heartwarming things we grew up with.
Yeah. I think it was about roughly 20 years ago, you got into the cold cut business with MTK. What did you learn from that experience?
Don't do it. That was me who did that.
Yeah.
So what I learned was this business is a lot tougher because I did not know it as well as I thought I did. It was a mistake I made, but
Okay.
I've learned a lot from it.
Okay.
And that's what I mean, before you leap, really understand what you're leaping into.
Okay.
Coming back into the family business was very comfortable because I really knew it well.
Yeah.
Stepping out was, I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
What was it about that particular market that made it so different?
So I didn't understand the cost structures. I understood the consumer and what the consumer wanted. What I didn't understand too well was the back end of how much the protein business changes in costs, which makes it very difficult for you to continue to go forward, and maintain a certain price point on the shelf, especially if you're a small company.
Yeah.
Smaller, bigger companies can balance it. I couldn't.
Yeah.
So that was very difficult for me to understand.
Yeah. You know, speaking of, balancing the price points and the costs, I don't think no one could have anticipated the run-up of inflation that we've seen over the past few years. How has inflation impacted how you run the business in terms of labor, materials, the basic costs of making the products?
Everything has pretty much risen, especially through the COVID period, and then we haven't really seen a slowdown from there. It impacts everything we do. We have to be that much more careful with how we make products. We always say, make it better before you make it cheaper, and that's really we adhere to that. We don't want to cut the size. We don't want to change ingredients. So what do you have to do? You have to get more efficient at what you do. You have to depend on maybe more technology, and at times you have to take price.
Yeah.
But we're not going to make a cheaper product.
Yeah.
And that's another way of, I'm not saying that's a wrong thing to do. A lot of companies do that successfully. That's not who we are.
Yeah. Because you're subject to the price of milk.
We're subject to the price of milk, the price of fuel. People forget about the price of fuel.
Yeah.
It takes fuel to move your raw ingredients from your vendors into your plant. That's a cost. And then it takes fuel to get it to your customers. That's a cost. Fuel's a big piece of everybody's budget because it touches everything. So as fuel prices go up, everything goes up. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is. If it has to be moved, it's going to go up in cost. So you figure out how to be more efficient. Those are good challenges at times because they really get you to sit back and think, how can I do this better?
Yeah.
How can I improve? But then you get to a point where you can't push any further than that, and you have to start thinking about a price increase. Then you start thinking, what kind of price increase do I take? Do I try to think about taking a bigger price increase, or is this market going to go the other way and I'll ride the wave?
Yeah.
So you have to make those decisions. We've done both over time.
Tell me one way inflation has impacted Cacique.
Yeah, so milk costs have now been steady, but they rose. To be fair to our farmer partners, first it dipped significantly. They're on the other side of that, and they got hurt. But then prices skyrocketed thereafter. Raw materials, packaging film, corrugated boxes, just about everything we touch has risen in price, and nothing has really come down to balance it. We also have a meat plant. We make chorizo. All meat prices have escalated. We put metal clips on the end of each chub to get clamped on there. Yeah. Those metal clips are almost twice as much now as they were. And you think, well, it's a metal clip. Yeah, it's a metal clip, but we make a lot of them.
Yeah.
So all these pieces, there's nothing right now that's any less in cost than it was, say, 4 years ago. Yeah. And it's going to continue to be challenging over time.
So, as we get a little closer to today, I mean, you know, for the most part, you grew up in California. Yeah. The company started in California. At what point did you think about moving?
About 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we started thinking about it. From a distribution standpoint, we could cover the Western United States efficiently, but 2/3 of the population lives east of what we could cover. And we were getting a lot of interest as we do more marketing, a lot of interest from New York, from here, from Florida, from Georgia, from Michigan, all the states that we would have a difficult time shipping into because of fuel costs, freight costs. So we made a decision that we needed to get closer to the market, to the future market. And that's how we ended up in Amarillo, is we finally made that decision that it's going to happen. About 4 years ago, we hired a site selection group, and we started with 118 sites nationally that met our criteria.
Yep.
8 states, Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Colorado,
Yeah.
Idaho, Kentucky, New York, and I want to say Georgia.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. How many states did you initially consider?
The way it works is you create a criteria of what your needs, raw material, where you need to be from freight, and you give it to a third party, and they just want to scan.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, there's 118 sites in the U.S. We didn't tell them the where. There's 118 sites that meet this criteria. So over a 6-month period, we took 118 and made it 17. And those 17 we toured and spoke to every single city, every single mayor, every single development group. And when we got to Amarillo, we kind of felt something a little different there, in a good way.
Yeah.
Very, very different there. And as we walked out, we thought, I hope this was the place, because we feel very comfortable. 17 becomes 4, 4 becomes 1, which is Amarillo. And that's how we got there.
So this is a very extensive, labor-intensive process.
The new facility depends a lot on robotics for a couple of reasons.
I just meant like in terms of making such a big move, relocating the headquarters, finding where we're going to build a plant. It just sounds like this is a very, there's a lot that goes into this decision, obviously.
Correct. I had no gray hair before this decision. Now look at me. It's actually been a great process for us.
Yeah.
Continue to learn, but yeah, it's been work.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of work for a lot of people. A lot of new learnings. A lot of people in the organization that don't know who we are.
Yeah.
Because as we move, not everyone wants to, for various reasons. Most of them do with family, don't make that journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been interesting. It's been good.
At one point, you said Amarillo is a must-see for site selectors. Why is that?
It's got everything we needed. Every city had, for us, every city we looked at had something that just wasn't right. And they weren't trying to hide it, it doesn't meet this criteria or meet these criteria. You always felt like we were looking at something that we had to accept as not the best place we had to live with. Amarillo wasn't. It had the milk supply, had the labor force, the people, the community. It's off of I-40, which is the main thoroughfare now east and west. So it really had all the pieces we needed right there. Great energy systems. We haven't had any issues with that at all, unlike here a little bit when the freeze, but it's been great for us.
Yeah.
We're really happy there.
Yeah. What, was there anything, when you're envisioning this move, was the plan always, wherever we build, did you always have a plan that wherever we end up building the plant, our headquarters needs to be somewhat close by?
Not really, but because we're actually not that close. It's a 5-hour drive, hour flight. But we wanted to come to Texas because here we're much closer to our markets, much more closer to our customers. Going to see a large customer that's in Cincinnati, going out of California, is a 2 to 3 day trip. 1 day there, the meeting, 1 day back. Out of here, it's the same day. And I could say that for anywhere in the United States. So from reaching out to our customers and meeting with them face to face and hearing how we can help them, this is actually it's centralized. It's a much better location to achieve. So regardless of where the plant landed, we would probably be somewhere in the Midwest to be able to access those customers.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, of all the, and I know all of these states are very savvy now with the economic incentives and tax abatements and things to that nature. I just had wondered, why Texas?
So Texas, Amarillo, for example, has the third largest milk shed in the country. So we have milk available to us an hour away, as much as we need.
Yeah.
Great quality milk. And that in itself, that's the biggest single ingredient we have. That was a must-have. We must have access to the road system to distribute product, off of I-40. So when you start adding all the pieces up, we have to have the energy. It's a great energy system there.
Yeah.
All these pieces, you start adding them together, and the picture starts forming about where you need to be.
Yeah.
And in that case, for us, it's Amarillo.
Yeah. I know I know Amarillo gave the tax abatement. You also got the TEF grant as well. How competitive is Texas when it comes to attracting companies like yours?
Texas is very competitive. Is it more competitive than others? I think it depends, it's situational. But Texas is very, very competitive. And I think you can see around us how this state is growing by leaps and bounds. I think it has a lot to do with that, but it's also a lot to do with the community here.
Yeah.
The people here have just been fabulous to us. They're like neighbors that we've known all our lives, but never really knew how much help we've had.
As you settled on Amarillo, why, and then started thinking about the headquarters, why North Texas? Why Irving?
So we wanted something near the airport.
Yeah.
For travel purposes,
Yep.
For business purposes. So we looked in the area, and this building was available. So that's why Irving.
Yeah.
Amarillo was, again, because of everything around it.
Yeah.
And also, I think Amarillo allows us to make the best quality product we can,
Yeah.
which was very, very important to us.
Yeah. And when now that you've been here, coming up on a year for the plant in Amarillo, has Texas been everything you thought it would be, or are there things you didn't anticipate that you've seen over the course of the year of being here in Texas?
Yes, the weather.
Yeah.
Some of the weather is not what I expected, but it's okay. We've learned to live with it. It's been everything and then some.
Yeah.
What we really enjoy are the people. So when we're putting the plant up in Amarillo, we've just opened it, and like any new opening, there's issues. We've got people coming in. Hey, I heard you've got this issue. Can I help you? That neighborly approach. They're not looking for it to get paid. They're just, hey, I know someone that might help you. That was amazing to us. Really,
something you didn't see necessarily in California to that extent.
Not like that. People were coming in, I wouldn't say droves, but quite a bit to say, how can I help you? Welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
They weren't looking for work. They weren't looking for anything for themselves. They just wanted to welcome us and see if they can help us in any way. That was very touching.
Yeah. Where do you see, now that you've been here a year, where do you see the company going?
So we talked about the melting pot of food. That's not going to change. That's going to continue. Mexican food continues to rise. It'll continue to be part of the Americana that it is today. We are going to continue to ride and push that wave as the business will double in 5 years is the goal, and double again in 8 to 9 years. But still very true to our roots of who we are. It's all about quality, all about family, all about integrity. We put that in all our labels. We believe that those are our values. And that's not going to change. That's been like that since my parents did the business. Those were the values they instilled in us. And those are the values we're pushing forward. So how do you do that within these values? Yeah, you stick to it.
Yeah.
But the business continues to grow, the market continues to grow, and if we make the right decisions, have the right team, and continue to follow those principles, we'll get there.
Yeah. Do you ever see a day where you would take Cacique public?
I haven't thought much about that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I've also stopped questioning the future sometimes.
Yeah.
There's some things you just can't predict.
Yeah.
10 years ago, had you asked me, are you going to be in Amarillo sometime?
Yeah.
No. Yet we're here.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer. I haven't thought much about that.
Yeah.
But we're a long ways from there.
Yeah. So obviously, you learned from your mom and dad You took over the business. You have 3 children.
Yes.
Will one of them succeed you one day?
So I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
We're really more about talent. Who is the talent, or where is the talent that's going to help the team grow at a faster rate?
Yeah.
Will it be one of my children or my sisters or my brother? Possibly. I don't know. But if they do end up working here, it's because they want to be here and they're talent, not because they have the right last name, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's something we feel very strongly about.
I can tell you feel a very big responsibility because you kept saying we. I can tell you feel a very big responsibility for all of the people that now, make up Cacique.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it is a responsibility.
Yeah.
But it's a comfortable one.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe how special this place is. It's hard to describe how well we know each other. Even though we haven't been together that long yet because we're out of California, it's hard to describe that responsibility, which is real, but the team makes it so that it doesn't weigh heavy most of the time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
If you could go back in time, knowing what you know now, sitting where you now sit, and tell your dad something the day he got to the United States, what would you tell him?
Do everything you want to do. Keep doing what you want to do. Absolutely. He had a path that he had to go through to get. There are no shortcuts in life. There are just none. He had to get through being a handyman. He had to get through being a mechanic, so he knew how to work on equipment. He had to get through all those pieces before he started his own business, because those skills, transferable.
Yeah.
Had he tried to do it from the get-go, it may have been a different story.
Yeah. Anything we missed?
I can't tell you how proud I am of this team. I can't articulate how proud I am of what they've accomplished, what we continue to accomplish. Half our team is in Amarillo right now, getting that plant up to where we know it's going to be. It's on that path, and I'm here.
Yeah.
And I completely trust them, and it's just a great team. It's a great company. I think it's a great story. It's a great product. The one thing that we didn't touch, but it's very special to us, is the table.
Really?
Because as a kid, we always talk about the table.
Yep.
As a kid, I remember my parents, when they were at home, we'd eat at the dinner table, but after we went to bed, guess what happened at the dinner table? It became the desk. That's where they did their bills.
Yeah.
So we ate at the table, we cried at the table, my parents paid bills at the table, we did homework on that table. And that's a theme throughout the company, is the table. To us, there's only 2 things that unite people across the world: food and music. And we're one of those. And the table connects us with food.
Yeah.
And to us, that's something very special.
Very sacred.
Very sacred.